There were 3 wine glasses in the sink. We only owned 2. The first one had lipstick. Hers. The second was mine, still half full because I can't stomach the cheap stuff she buys anymore. But the third? The third was rinsed. Like someone didn't want to leave prints. She was humming in the bedroom. Shania Twain. She only hums when she's nervous. I didn't ask her about the glass. Not right away. I just stared at it, water droplets still clinging to the rim like sweat on a guilty face. Instead, I opened the junk drawer, pulled out the little notebook where she keeps her manifestations. You know, law of attraction, crystals, all that. She never hides it. That was her mistake. I flipped to the last written page. Scrawled in pink ink, with stars and hearts drawn around it. Let go of Elroy. I deserve passion. I deserve danger. I deserve Alejandro. The pen was still warm. I closed the notebook, put it back exactly where it was. Then I walked to the hallway mirror and practiced my smile. I'm bad at lying, but I'm great at pretending to believe one. When I walked into the bedroom, she had her back turned, slipping earrings into her ears like she was going somewhere casual, somewhere local. You look nice, I said. She flinched just slightly. It's girls' night. Yeah. I smiled. Tell Heather I said hi. She turned, blinked. Heather. You always go with Heather, right? Silence. Elroy, she said, and it was that tone. The tone you use when you're about to step on a landmine and you're trying to explain why you deserve to do it anyway. I think we need to talk. I nodded. Sure. I feel like you've been distant. Uninterested. You've stopped showing up, emotionally. You don't touch me the same. And I know this will sound crazy, but I think we've reached a point where we either evolve or we go our separate ways. I said nothing. So, she continued, I want to open the marriage. Just for a while. Just until we both find ourselves again. I scratched my jaw. You already found someone, didn't you? No, she said quickly. Too quickly. I pointed toward the sink. We only have 2 wine glasses, Maureen. Her face went pale, then pink, then white again. You went through my stuff? She said, deflecting like a seasoned criminal. I shrugged. You left your heart on paper, babe. I just read the fine print. That's when she did something I didn't expect. She smiled. Not a sweet smile. Not a guilty one either. But a calm, dangerous one, like someone who thinks they've already won. Then you know, she whispered. This is happening, whether you say yes or not. And I smiled right back. Then you should know too. I whispered, stepping closer. I'm not the Elroy you remember. What she didn't know was, the real game had already started, and she wasn't holding the winning hand anymore. She didn't say anything after I told her I wasn't the Elroy she remembered. Just stood there, holding her earrings like they were weapons and trying to figure out what I meant. The silence stretched, and for the first time in years, I didn't try to fill it. That was her thing, using quiet like a scalpel. But not tonight. She eventually walked out the door without another word. No, I love you. No, don't wait up. Just the thump of her boots and the faint smell of her coconut hair serum disappearing into the hallway. I let her go. I needed her to feel safe. Like the web was hers, and I was just the slow, gullible fly still stuck in the middle. I poured out the leftover wine, rinsed the glasses, and put them back where they belonged. Every move felt sharp, mechanical, like my body was going through the motions while my brain sprinted through possibilities. She thought she'd handed me a bomb with that ultimatum. She didn't know I'd already seen the timer ticking days ago. I logged into her email that night. How? Easy. Her password was still Gemini Queen 88. She never changed it. Probably never thought I'd guess something so obvious. I scrolled through dozens of receipts, calendar invites, strange Airbnb confirmations from places we'd never been. And then I found it. A reservation. 2 guests. A boutique cabin near Lake Geneva. Booked for the upcoming weekend. A place known for privacy. No kids. No neighbors. Just trees, soundproof walls, and a bottle of complimentary Prosecco waiting on arrival. Romantic. Strategic. But she wasn't strategic enough. Because while she was out that night, likely clinking glasses with someone who called her a mo, in a voice that made her feel 25 again, I made a few quiet arrangements of my own. First, I called the cabin and added myself as the second guest. I used her card. They didn't even question it. I guess Alejandro didn't make the booking himself. Then I scheduled a locksmith for the next morning. Changed the locks, reset the alarm code, moved her spare key from the fake rock under the porch to my sock drawer. I wasn't kicking her out. Not yet. but I wanted to see what she would do when the script didn't follow her plot. By the time she stumbled back in, sometime around 1:40 a.m., I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. I could smell cologne that wasn't mine. Some citrusy thing. It clung to her like guilt. She didn't even try to be quiet. Kicked her boots off in the hall, dropped her bag like a teenager sneaking in past curfew, and crawled into bed with this almost bored sigh. Like it was exhausting pretending she still lived here. She didn't notice the missing key. Not yet. That would come later. The next morning, she brewed coffee like nothing happened. She even offered me some, chipper as a bird in a cartoon. "Big plans this weekend?" she asked. Her voice was honey and arsenic. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Yeah, real big." Then I smiled, just barely, and went back to reading the paper. She didn't press. She probably thought I was bluffing, that I'd cave, that I'd cry in the shower and write a poem about her eyeliner stains on the pillowcase. What she didn't know was that I'd already messaged Alejandro from her phone. I told him she'd changed her mind, that the weekend was off, that her husband found out, that things were complicated. And then, a minute later, I blocked his number. She was going to Lake Geneva alone, or so she thought. The day she left for the cabin, the air felt thick. Not like weather thick, but silence thick, like something was pressing down on the walls and flattening every sound. She didn't kiss me goodbye, just said, "I'll be back Sunday night," as casually as if she were going to a yoga retreat. I nodded, barely looking up from the sink where I was washing a pan that didn't need washing. I was so calm she probably thought she'd broken me, that I'd accepted the new rules, that I was sitting quietly in the prison cell she built and thanking her for the bunk. She packed light, just a weekend bag and a bottle of perfume she only used when she was chasing validation. As she walked out, Bowie, our beagle, not the rock star, tried to follow her, tail wagging like he didn't know the difference between loyalty and habit. She looked down at him, hesitated, then said, "Stay with Dad." Her voice cracked slightly. That was the first real moment of hesitation I'd seen in weeks. I gave her 10 minutes after she drove off. Then I grabbed my own bag, a simple duffel, packed the night before. Inside, a phone charger, my dad's old pocket knife, a disposable camera, don't ask, and a folded-up printout of her reservation. I had booked a cheap roadside motel about 20 minutes from the cabin. I wasn't going there to confront her, not yet. I wanted to watch first. To see her. I needed to understand how deep the rabbit hole went before I even thought about burning it down. When I arrived at the motel, it smelled like mildew and lost hope. The wallpaper was peeling, the TV remote had duct tape on the back, and the only vending machine was out of everything except root beer and peanuts. Perfect. I dropped my bag, pulled out my own phone, and opened the tracking app I'd installed on hers weeks ago. She never noticed it. Why would she? She was too busy spinning news stories to realize someone else had already started writing the ending. Her Blue Dot was already parked at the cabin. Alone. I waited. And waited. Hours passed. I ordered terrible fried chicken from the gas station down the road. I scrolled through old texts between us from years ago, ones where she used to send me blurry selfies from the bathtub and called me babyface. I don't know why I tortured myself like that. Maybe I needed to remind myself that I wasn't crazy for once believing she loved me. Night fell. Still no sign of Alejandro. I was beginning to think she'd brought someone else. Maybe the guy from her office with the overgelled hair. Or maybe she really did plan on spending the weekend alone, sipping wine and congratulating herself for being so brave. Around 9:40 p.m., her up moved slightly, just a few feet. Then the front porch light came on. I could see it through the trees from the edge of the woods where I parked, watching the cabin like a ghost. She stepped outside in a robe. She was on the phone. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could read her body language like a book I'd already memorized. She was pacing, frustrated. She kept looking down the driveway. That's when it hit me. She didn't know he'd been blocked. She still thought he was coming. And he wasn't. She was waiting for a man who thought she ghosted him. My stomach twisted in this sick, shameful satisfaction. I hated feeling good about it. But there it was. The karma, quietly unfolding like a slow-motion car crash she couldn't stop. She sat on the steps for over an hour, checking her phone every few minutes, reapplying lip gloss under the porch light. It was freezing out, but she didn't go back inside. Not until almost midnight. I should have gone back to the motel. But I didn't. I stayed in my car, wrapped in a blanket, parked just beyond the tree line, watching the soft cabin lights through the fogged-up windshield. At some point I dozed off, only to jolt awake around 3 a.m. when my phone buzzed. It was a motion alert. I'd set up a second tracker, not on her phone, but in the lining of her purse. She was moving again, not just pacing this time. She was leaving the cabin. I sat up straight and checked the map. She wasn't heading for the car. She was going into the woods. Alone. In the middle of the night. That's when I realized this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. Something else was going on. Something I hadn't prepared for. I didn't follow her right away. My first instinct was to think this was some kind of setup. Like she knew I was nearby. That she somehow sensed I'd been tailing her, watching from the shadows like some low-rent detective in a romance noir. But after a full minute of no lights, no motion back toward the car, and no sound but the wind knocking around dry branches above me, I realized she wasn't trying to lure anyone. She was genuinely walking into the woods. At 3 a.m, in slippers. I pulled my coat tighter, grabbed a flashlight from the glove box, and kept low. The trees around Lake Geneva are dense, and in autumn they get this skeletal look, bare arms reaching toward the moonlight, like they're begging not to be forgotten. I moved slowly, carefully. Her tracking signal was pinging steadily, roughly 60 feet away. She wasn't moving fast. I think that's what unnerved me most. When I finally spotted her between the trees, I froze. She wasn't crying. She wasn't lost. She was kneeling. Just kneeling in front of what looked like a tree stump, though I couldn't quite make it out from where I stood. She had something in her lap. A box, maybe? I couldn't be sure. She didn't move for what felt like forever. Just knelt there, like someone mourning a grave only they knew about. I waited. My breath caught in my throat when I saw her take something out of the box. A photo? She held it in both hands, looked at it, then pressed it to her chest. Then another item, and another. I took a slow step closer. It was a shoebox, covered in stickers. The kind of thing a teenager would keep under their bed. Maureen was gently pulling items out one by one, laying them on the stump like a ritual. A concert ticket, a fabric bracelet, a dried flower petal. Then she took out a keychain, a bright red motel keychain, the kind you get from those places with flickering neon signs and buzzing vending machines. The number on it was 107. That's when I realized where I'd seen that number before. My motel room. Suddenly it all crashed in at once. The wine glass in the sink, the calm ultimatum, the planned weekend, the solo trip. This wasn't her first secret getaway. And this definitely wasn't the first time she'd used that motel. The keychain wasn't a memento. It was a trophy. I stepped on a branch. It cracked like a firework. She froze, whipped her head around. I ducked behind a tree before she could see me fully, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the crickets. For a second, I thought she might come toward me. But she didn't. She shoved everything back into the box, stood up, and bolted through the woods, not back toward the cabin, but deeper in. I followed at a distance. The woods felt different now, not cold but tense, like they were holding their breath. I kept moving, flashlight off, trying not to crunch any more underbrush. She moved with panic in her steps, fast and uncoordinated. Whatever that shoebox meant to her, she wasn't ready to be seen with it. She never looked back, which only told me one thing. She was terrified, but not of me, of what I might have seen. 10 minutes later, she finally emerged at the backside of the cabin, through a narrow trail I hadn't noticed before. She paused on the porch, looking over her shoulder once, and then slipped inside, locking the door behind her. I waited, then circled to where she'd left the box. It was gone. Only the outline remained on the stump, surrounded by disturbed leaves. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she called me. Her voice was chipper again. "Good morning. Just checking in." I said nothing at first, then calmly asked, "Having fun in the woods?" There was a long pause, longer than any silence we'd shared before. "Elroy," she said slowly. "Where are you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, she understood what I'd known for a while. This wasn't her game anymore. It was mine. I didn't answer her question. I just let the line go quiet for a few seconds before saying, "You dropped something last night." Another pause. Just the faint sound of her breathing, sharp and shallow like someone trying not to panic out loud. I imagined her sitting on the edge of the cabin bed, legs crossed, fingers fidgeting around the edge of her phone, replaying everything she did the night before, trying to figure out exactly what I saw, exactly how much I knew. "I don't know what you mean," she finally said, voice brittle, thin. You do, I replied. You just don't want to say it out loud. But we're way past pretending, Maureen. Elroy, what are you doing here? She dropped the fake sweetness. Her tone cracked into something unfamiliar. Not anger, not fear, something in between. Guilt pretending to be control. I could ask you the same, I said. Because from where I'm standing, this doesn't look like a girl's weekend. This looks like a memory graveyard. She hung up. Just like that. No excuse, no explanation. Not even a lie to cover the tracks. And in that moment, I realized something that should have scared me, but didn't. She wasn't shocked I'd followed her. She was shocked I understood what I was looking at. There's a kind of betrayal that lives in the future, someone fantasizing about being with someone else, texting late at night, daydreaming about a different life. But what I was starting to uncover felt older. Something rooted. Something that had been happening under my nose long before the ultimatum. Before the wine glass. Before Alejandro. I left the woods that morning and drove back to the motel, pacing the room until checkout time like a dog that's lost the scent but knows the danger's still nearby. That motel room, room 107, suddenly it meant something different. Not just a symbol of her infidelity, but maybe a starting point. After checkout, I didn't drive home. I drove 20 minutes in the other direction to a hardware store and bought a cheap crowbar, gloves, and one of those disposable plastic ponchos, the kind used for yard work or painting. Then I went back to the cabin, parked just out of view, and waited until her car was gone. She left around 2 p.m., probably convinced I'd already left, probably assuming I'd confront her back in Indiana, maybe in the kitchen, maybe over a cold dinner we'd both pretend to eat. But I wasn't going to wait. I broke in through the back porch window. Quiet, quick, controlled. Inside, the cabin was unsettlingly clean. Bare, even. There were no traces of a cozy weekend. The wine was unopened. The fireplace hadn't been lit. It wasn't a romantic getaway. It was a ritual site. The shoebox was what mattered. And I knew she hadn't taken it with her. It took me less than 10 minutes to find it. She'd buried it. Inside the bathroom, under a loose floor tile behind a clawfoot tub. Rookie mistake, really. A damp environment. She probably thought she was being clever, the kind of thing you'd read in a bad thriller novel. But she'd wrapped the box in a garbage bag, and when I pulled it out, it still had the faint scent of her perfume. Same keychain. Same dried flower. But there were more photos now. I flipped through them slowly, heart pounding, breath held. Maureen with someone I didn't recognize. Again and again. Same man. Same arm around her waist. His face hidden in most shots, either turned away or cropped. In one photo, taken in front of a roadside diner, her head rested on his chest, and her eyes were closed. Peaceful. One of the pictures had a date scribbled on the back. October 17th, 2021. That was the weekend she told me she was visiting her sister in Minneapolis. I remember that weekend vividly because I spent it in the ER with a busted knee after slipping on a stairwell at work. I called her 3 times. She sent a thumbs-up emoji and didn't call back until Monday. I put the photo down and stared at the box. That was the first real moment where the nausea hit me. This wasn't about one affair. This wasn't about emotional distance. This was about an entirely different life, one she maintained alongside ours. Parallel timelines. And I was the lesser one. I didn't take the box. I didn't need to. I took the photos, scanned them with my phone, put everything back exactly the way I found it. I wanted her to think I hadn't touched a thing. Because now, this wasn't just about catching her. It was about making her admit it. Out loud. On my terms. The drive home was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I didn't turn on music. Didn't roll the windows down. The whole world outside felt like it had paused, and I was stuck in a long, cold hallway between 2 locked doors. I replayed every moment of the last few days. The wine glass, the ultimatum, the woods, the hidden box, the photos, all of it spinning like a wheel that refused to stop. Something inside me had crossed a threshold, but I wasn't sure what that meant yet. I wasn't angry in the normal way. This wasn't yelling or smashing plates kind of rage. This was the kind that simmered. The kind that rewrites you. Maureen beat me home. Her car was already in the driveway when I pulled up. The porch light was off, but the living room window glowed like a soft trap. I parked a few houses down. Sat in the car for almost 20 minutes. I needed to walk into that house as the version of myself she thought I still was. A little wounded, maybe confused, maybe weak, but not dangerous. Not calculating. Not the man who knew she had a second life packed into a shoebox she buried beneath bathroom tile. When I stepped through the front door, she was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket she never used unless she was hungover or scared. She looked up, startled, but didn't say anything right away. Just watched me like I was a cop with a warrant. "You didn't answer your phone," she said after a moment. Her voice was tight, almost rehearsed. "I know," I replied, setting my keys down on the kitchen counter. I opened the fridge, stared at nothing for a few seconds, closed it again. The silence stretched. Then she spoke again, carefully. "Elroy, if this is going to become something weird, then I think we should take a step back and talk about it rationally." "You mean like adults?" I asked. "Yes." "Like adults who trust each other?" "Yes." I walked slowly toward the couch and sat in the armchair opposite her. She pulled the blanket a little tighter around her shoulders. It was the first time I saw her actually look afraid. So I asked, "How long were you with him?" Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. A pause. Then, "I told you." "No," I interrupted, calm but firm. "No more telling me things. You owe me the truth. So I'll ask again, how long?" She looked away, then rubbed her temples with both hands like she was pushing the question back into her skull. "About 2 years," she finally whispered. The words didn't even sting anymore. They just confirmed. Like hearing your doctor finally say the word you already knew was coming. I nodded. "Was it serious?" She laughed. "Not the funny kind. The kind people use when they're unraveling." "Define serious, Elroy." "He didn't propose to me or anything." "That's not what I asked." Her shoulders sagged. "It started as comfort. I don't know. He made me feel like I wasn't stuck. Like I had options." I leaned forward slightly. "And I didn't." She didn't answer. That was answer enough. "So you kept both. Him and me. One to dream about. One to clean up after your dog, and remember to pay the water bill." "Don't twist this." "I'm not twisting anything, Maureen. I'm finally seeing it clearly." She stood up abruptly, blanket falling away. "You don't get to act like a victim when you spent the last week stalking me. I didn't stalk you. You showed up at the cabin. You buried a box of photos under a floor tile." Her face drained of color. "I watched you in the woods," I added, quieter. "You weren't expecting him. You were mourning him. That wasn't a rendezvous. That was a goodbye." She didn't deny it. I stood now too, slowly. "Is he dead, Maureen?" She flinched. And that's when something in the room changed. The way the air felt. The way her breathing shifted. The way her hand went instinctively toward her hip, not for defense, but for grounding, like someone trying not to float out of their own body. She turned away. "You need to drop this." "No," I said. "I really don't." She stared at the floor like it might open up and swallow her whole. "He died in an accident. A year ago. I didn't know how to tell you. I just kept the box because it was mine. That part of me was mine." The room went silent. "You were still cheating," I said, but it didn't come out angry. "I know," she replied. "Was it love?" She nodded once. Just once. That was the moment something inside me gave way. Not broke, just let go. Like I'd been clinging to this rope, hoping it would lead me back to something. And now I finally understood it only ever wrapped around in circles. I walked past her, into the hallway, and stopped in the doorway to our bedroom. "You're right," I said. "We should open the marriage." She turned slowly. "But just know," I added, "if you're still grieving someone dead, I won't compete with a ghost. And I won't sleep next to someone who sees me as the consolation prize." "I never said you were." "Then show me," I said. "Prove it. If you want this to keep going, then you be honest. For once. From this moment on, I want nothing but truth. Because if I catch one more lie, I'll disappear so fast you won't even have time to bury the next box." I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just went to bed. And for the first time in a year, I slept through the night. The next morning was ordinary in the worst kind of way. The house smelled like burnt toast and shampoo. Maureen moved around the kitchen like she always had, methodical, half asleep, emotionally elsewhere. She wore one of my old hoodies, which used to mean something. Now it just looked like camouflage. We didn't talk. Not because we were angry. We were just circling something unspoken, something sharp in the middle of the room that neither of us wanted to step on first. She made coffee. I poured cereal. Bowie scratched at the sliding glass door to be let out. It was the choreography of a couple pretending not to rot. I told her I had errands. She didn't ask what. I didn't offer. But instead of errands, I drove to the college where she used to take night classes back in 2019, a quiet little community campus tucked behind a strip mall where we used to buy mulch and argue about paint colors. I don't know what led me there exactly. Something had been nagging at me since the shoebox, since the photo with the motel key, since the name Alejandro. He wasn't just a fling. I could tell by the way she'd touched the photos, by how carefully she packed the box, by how she never mentioned him in any of her lies. The things we protect the hardest are often the ones we're not ready to destroy or admit existed. So I did something I've never done before in my entire life. I pretended to be someone else. I walked into the registrar's office and told the clerk I needed to verify a name from the fall 2021 writing program. Said I was doing a background check for a publishing internship. It wasn't the smoothest lie, but she didn't question it. She was barely listening. Name, she asked. Alejandro, I said. Last name, unknown. Possibly went by Alex. Spanish or South American, maybe. She typed for a while. I leaned on the counter like I wasn't sweating bullets beneath my jacket. There was one Alejandro enrolled in fall 2021, she finally said. Creative nonfiction. Alejandro Santos. Would have been 29 at the time. He passed away. I blinked. Sorry. She glanced up, confused that I hadn't already known. He died. Right after finals. Car accident. Hit by a drunk driver on County Road 12. It was a big deal here. He was popular. My mouth went dry. Did he know someone named Maureen? She frowned, clearly uncomfortable now. I can't give out any more information. But yeah, I remember her. She helped organize the memorial on campus. They were close. That word, close, rattled in my skull all the way back to the car. I didn't turn the engine on right away. Just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, heart pounding like I'd uncovered something sacred that wasn't mine to touch. She hadn't just lost a secret lover. She'd lost someone she thought she'd start over with. And she never got the chance. I drove home slowly. Every streetlight felt longer. Every bump in the road rattled something loose in my chest. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel betrayed anymore either. I just felt erased, like I'd been a placeholder in a life she had never fully chosen. When I walked into the house, Maureen was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, papers scattered everywhere. Not work papers, journals, stacks of them. Some were mine, old ones I hadn't seen in years. Others were hers, hardbound, softbound, one with her maiden name in gold lettering. She didn't look up. She was reading. I stepped closer. What are you doing? Her voice was soft, distracted, trying to remember who I used to be. I pulled out a chair across from her and sat down. And she finally looked up. Her eyes were glassy, tired. I don't know. That's the problem. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. She slid a journal toward me. My journal. From 2020. I hadn't even remembered writing it. Inside were notes from my father's hospital visits, sketches of house repair plans, recipes I'd tried and ruined. There were also pages about her. About how I felt like I was losing her, day by day, but didn't know how to stop it. I read every word, she said. I didn't know you wrote like that. I didn't know you read like that. She smiled. Just a little. I kept the box, she said, almost whispering. Not because I wanted to forget you, but because I didn't know how to forgive myself. For what? For building two futures, and never choosing either. That line hit harder than anything else. Because it was true. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd betrayed herself too. She'd tried to live two lives, and ended up with none. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore. It was honest. I want to fix it, she said. But I don't know what that looks like. And if you leave tomorrow, I won't stop you. I probably deserve it. But I can't lie to you again. Not one more time. I stared at her for a long time, then asked something I hadn't prepared for. Did he know about me? She looked down. Yes. He knew everything. I didn't say anything after she told me he knew about me. I just sat there, holding her words in my mouth like a pebble I didn't want to swallow. It made everything make more sense, and none at all. He wasn't a secret. He was a parallel truth. He hadn't stolen her from me. She'd handed him the part of herself she didn't think I'd understand. And maybe back then, she was right. But I wasn't that man anymore. The day passed in slow fragments. We didn't argue. We didn't cry. We just existed near each other. Quietly. She cooked dinner. Actually cooked, like she used to when we first moved in, when she'd sing off-key while chopping onions and always burn the garlic bread. She didn't sing that night. but she smiled when she handed me my plate. That was something. We ate in the living room. TV off. Phones out of reach. Bowie curled up at our feet like even he didn't know what came next. After dinner, we washed the dishes together. I dried. She scrubbed. It felt normal, but not numb. Just simple. A rhythm that didn't need explaining. Later, I pulled the shoebox from the hall closet. I'd hidden it in plain sight. She watched me set it on the table, but didn't move. You want to keep it? I asked. She didn't answer right away, then nodded. Not to revisit it, just to remember that it happened, that I lost something, but I didn't have to keep losing everything. I opened the lid. The dried flour, the ticket stub, the motel key, they were still there. But she'd added something new. A photo of the two of us, taken years ago, from a road trip through Michigan when we'd run out of gas, and spent the afternoon laughing under a gas station awning, eating beef jerky and talking about nothing. In the picture, her head rested on my shoulder. My eyes were closed. I was smiling. She didn't explain the photo. She didn't have to. That night, we sat on the back porch until nearly 2 a.m., wrapped in blankets, drinking tea. Not wine. No buzz. No lies. Just breath and air and time moving gently again. I don't know what happens next, she said softly, but I'm willing to start again. If you are. She reached for my hand. I let her. It wasn't a grand moment. No dramatic music. No fireworks. Just fingers touching and two people choosing to stop tearing at the wound. Choosing stillness over bitterness. Not out of desperation, but hope. Hope that maybe healing isn't something loud. Maybe it's just one quiet choice after another. A few weeks later, we donated the shoebox. All of it. The past, respectfully packaged and released. Not erased. Not denied. Just done. And one morning, she handed me a notebook. The same kind I used to scribble in. She'd filled it halfway, with letters to me she never sent, poems that didn't rhyme, things she was afraid to say. Now she wasn't afraid. We started writing in it together. Not everything. Not every day. But enough to know we were still here. Still choosing. Still healing. And maybe, just maybe, still in love.